The primary lymph nodes are here, the lymph nodes. They go here and here, right along sort of the bones, along the so-called Gruber's canal, through which all our basic blood flow passes. Here it dips under the knee, and accordingly under our knee it enters this popliteal fossa, and accordingly there are its own lymph nodes there. We have loose, free tissue there. So the lymph as a passive structure naturally flows along the softest, most protected layers. Here, starting from just below the knee, the vessel emerges and enters a structure known as Hunter's Canal, which is a passageway in the middle part of the thigh that allows important blood vessels and nerves to pass through. If you look closely, you can see that right here is where swelling in this region begins, because any increase in size or fluid in this confined space becomes noticeable more quickly than in other areas. Right here is a sort of triangular membrane in this region that covers Hunter's Canal. And here, passing between the vertical bundle of the adductor magnus muscle and accordingly the vastus medialis muscle, right here we have a small opening and it enters this zone. Here between the muscle bellies, you see, this is the belly of the quadriceps and this is the belly of the adductors. And accordingly, everything here enters the zone of the inguinal lymph node. On the left side, it's all analogous. But here, it merges at approximately this point. Our lymph nodes connect here. And further, right here, our central lymph flow begins. And approximately here is the cisterna coeli, which I mentioned. Next. This disappears, enters the diaphragm, and accordingly enters the mediastinum area. It goes along the mediastinum, exits here, and through the clavicle, enters the left subclavian vein. This is our main line. Accordingly, what collectors do we have on this main line? What are our collectors? In what order will we work with them, with these collectors? So the most important, the very first collector is the clavicle zone. So the clavicle is a bone. Accordingly, here is its contour. It comes out here, and here it makes a bend, adjoining in this zone the acromion, the process of the scapula, the muscles that attach to the clavicle. We have, accordingly, right here in this spot, this is a bundle of the pectoral muscle. Here we have a bundle of the deltoid muscle. Here, on this side, a very large, very powerful sternocleidomastoid muscle attaches. It's a wide strap like this. Don't think that what you see here, this front edge, is the entire muscle. It's a healthy one. And powerful, right? And below this spot, there's also the subclavian muscle, right? Also, near the clavicle, in this zone, the pectoralis minor muscle acts as a collector. It runs from the coracoid process. The coracoid process, here it is. You see, here's the shoulder, and right here under the clavicle, where it curves, we have a little bump here. And to the touch, it's a bit unpleasant, right? Right? This is precisely the coracoid process of the scapula, which sort of embeds itself here. And it's from here that the pectoralis minor muscle starts, going deep inside. It's the main collector for drainage from the chest area, and for women from the mammary gland area. Therefore, the condition of this muscle is extremely important for the health of the mammary gland, especially for recovery after childbirth and during periods of, development and so on. So, in many ways, the onset of mastopathy is often associated with hypertonicity of this very muscle. And also, the zone of influence here, on the side, we have the serratus muscle, which also controls the lymph outflow into the armpit area. Next. So, that's generally it in that way. This is, roughly speaking, the clavicle region that we need to work on. Next up is the chest region. We can't get inside the rib cage to do anything. But what determines the success of regulating lymph flow through it? The diaphragm. The diaphragm is a separate topic for us. Here it's simply the mobility of the ribs. Therefore, if our ribs have poor mobility, then And rib mobility involves our oblique abdominal muscles, and they connect with the serratus muscle. And on the back side, we have the iliocostalis muscle and many others. Well, we won't get bogged down in all that. It's probably too complicated for you for now, but we can just simply spread the ribs, enhance. Well, with external stimulation, generally increase the mobility of the rib cage. That is, use the articulation technique. Is that clear? Right? And then there's separate work with the diaphragm. I won't mention it now because otherwise your heads will be a jumble. For now, we really need to work on what we've just outlined together. So our main task here is to work on all of the bundles, specifically the 3 bundles. Here's the inner bundle and here's the costal group. This is our pectoralis muscle. It runs here. Accordingly, the deltoid muscle. And here, the serratus muscle. And of course, the mobility of the clavicle itself. We can do a preliminary check of the clavicle's mobility like this. We just move it. You see, it rolls over here. So in principle, the clavicle is more or less fine. This means that on this particular body, I don't have to struggle too much. Right. And here too, you see, if we move the skin, after moving the skin, we can also see that there isn't that characteristic tissue frozenness that's typical of poor lymph flow, right? So here, I'll just be outlining the individual steps. And well, so as not to make our model, our Varenka, uncomfortable. So how do we grip, let's say, the pectoralis muscle? Here's its upper bundle. The upper bundle, as we know, goes here, right? And here's the lower bundle. So we grip the pectoral, well, the mammary gland and the pectoralis muscle. And accordingly, we can do these kinds of rolling, articulating movements. That's one. Next, we can shift a finger or hand here and do similar movements. Then we can... So everywhere we have this movement, which is rhythmic characteristic of the rolling technique. Next. We can separately or come over here. Well, I'll just show you on this arm. We take the arm like this and 1, 1, 1. There. And you can also add this kind of movement. What am I doing here? See this? Pumping. Right. And so these nodes are being pumped there. And you can see the clavicle itself is also moving. Well, for that, I'd have to stand over here. So these are the kinds of options. They're not the only ones. I'll show you more later. So the general scheme is clear, right? And accordingly, we can properly work this entire zone. You can go this way, or you can go that way. There. What am I doing here? I'm working on, you see, the serratus muscle as well. Right? Why do I bother with all this? Because tense muscles are what obstruct the collectors for lymph flow. I mean, you can, like in standard lymphatic drainage, just pump all of this gently at first, of course. Right? It's great that I've pumped the lymph here. But what's important for us isn't just to drain a portion here, but to get the flow established. And the flow here is being blocked by these muscles. And that's why this manipulation is specifically about freeing up the collectors. There, you see, besides that, I'm also rocking. That's why it's called rhythmic sort of wave-like. The thing is, there's a technique called holistic pulsing, where everything is based on this kind of wave-like rocking of the body. There, and in this case, look, I'll show you in phases. I roll the leg back. What happens here? The tissue expands, right? I roll it in, see? And in the process, so in general, if you take a regular hose and do this with it, then from the other end, if it's filled with water, the water will flow out. So this wave-like motion constantly pushes the water like a fish's tail, or like a person in flippers, always pushing the water in that direction. That's what it's based on. And this too, see? Rocking the peritoneum, it sort of helps. This then is our first main collector. The second collector is the rib cage. So the rib cage for us is primarily the ribs, right? And their mobility. So in some cases we can work here. We can rub from the backside if there's general severe immobility. Well, you can do a simple diagnostic. Try it like this. You see the cage moves smoothly everywhere. So you don't have to dig in. You can just stimulate the intercostal muscles and so on. So accordingly, here's the work. See, I'm articulating it, the rib cage, back and forth. Or I can do one of the sides with these kinds of movements. So all the work is aimed at increasing the mobility of the rib cage. And at the end, you can do this. A deep breath. And on the exhale, and I help by squeezing the base of the rib cage and the sides. And the second action is, we've squeezed from the sides, so to speak. And the second action is like this. We bring the hand deep in there. Then again, we have them inhale. And on the exhale, we fold the rib cage in this way. Is that an effect on the diaphragm? No, this is for the mobility of the rib cage. Now separately, about the diaphragm. The diaphragm, as you know, is a dome-shaped muscle. Well, more accurately, it's not dome-shaped, it's actually flat. It takes on a dome shape here due to the pressure difference between the abdominal and thoracic cavities. In the chest, we have a slight vacuum, right? And that's why a puncture of the chest cavity is deadly for a person, because the lungs then collapse. It's this vacuum that allows the lungs to remain inflated. Here we have slightly excess pressure, and that's what supports the diaphragm in its dome shape. And when it straightens out, it becomes flatter, pushing the internal organs downward and allowing the ribcage to fill more completely. So, in overweight people, the internal organs descend, and as a matter of fact, this disrupts abdominal breathing here. And what happens is that the abdominal pressure all shifts downward because the anterior abdominal wall no longer holds them in place, and all the pressure ends up in our lower pelvis. Stagnation occurs here, which is actually why they have a saying about men with big bellies, that this whole situation is a tombstone for a fallen soldier. So because the soldier perishes there for good, since his blood supply is cut off by this whole situation. So, and in women with abdominal issues, what we get is like a process of stagnation in the lower pelvis, and consequently a predisposition to all sorts of fibroids and other nasty things. So that's why we need to work thoroughly on this collector here and the diaphragm. So what techniques can we use for a diaphragm massage at the level of this kind of wave-like drainage? That is, our diaphragm attaches here to the entire wall, right? And in the back, it attaches with its crura in the area of the spine. We don't go in there, we can't even reach it. So we can easily work just along the costal arches, right? That's where we might find some tension, especially related to the poor functioning of the internal organs. So it could be related to the stomach, chronic gastritis, problems with our pancreas and so on. Understood? So how do we do it? So, see, we take the rib cage and lift it up like this, and from this side I make some shifting movements, meaning I'm kind of grinding it. And the second option, I dig in like this, so I move towards it and squeeze a little. I can also go over here. Is that something like undercutting? Yes. See, I hold my hand here and roll onto it. Under the rib? Well, yes, but not hard. I'm not exactly hooking it. I feel bad for her, just like that. And similarly on the other side. So, well, in this way we've worked the diaphragm. Control through mobility. See, whoops, there it is. So, we finished our work here, and we're moving on to the next collector. The next collector is a big and interesting one, our abdomen. This is our tummy. And here's our tummy. This is how you can work here. You can, for example, take your time. See how? Is that a rolling technique? Yes, the rolling technique, of course. Whew, we move over here. And with this technique, the direction is always upward. That is, if I show it slowly, this is what we're doing. Understood? So look, here's what to pay attention to. Here, so first, second is here, with these kinds of pushes. You can use all these wave-like motions, right? but the most important thing is to drain it quite well right here from the bottom up. Everything goes upward. What about the diagonals? The mesentery of the small intestine runs like this. So here we pay special attention to the area of the cecum and the ileocecal valve. Here, approximately at this point is the sphincter of Oddi, which reacts very actively to all psychosomatics. And that's why this area is especially important. So you can place your fingers roughly here, but generally you work in this area like this. Meaning we're not going in with pinpoint pressure right now, right? But we're working like this. So you see we create a wave, and in time with this wave we rock the tummy, draining it as we go. Oh, 1. Try to do everything smoothly, without jerks. That is, without this kind of push. The abdomen doesn't like that at all, not one bit. We don't work on pregnant women, unless you want to observe the process of ending the pregnancy. So, understood. See, we've worked a little and the tummy has already flattened out a bit. But in general, you need to work here more seriously, for longer. I mean, I've only worked for about 3 minutes. Is the intensity different for each person? Look, for us, as I show in the first course, right? Where our golden mean is, where the boundary is between the point when we have relaxation and when we have toning. Look. Oh, see? This is her own frequency. That is, this is her personal frequency. Here I'm harmonizing it, so I work within it. I can work like this. See, there are countless variations, meaning I'm kind of scooping up the fluids from here, and so I can also rock it like this, like this. Can you do everything from one side, or do you have to move around? Well, whatever is comfortable for you. You'll always have to bend over for the other side. If you don't mind your back, you can of course do everything from one side. It all depends on how you treat yourself. If you love yourself, you'll move over. If not so much, then, well, you'll just have to put up with it. It's your funeral, as they say. Well, in general, sciatica is a wonderful teacher of ergonomics. Simply wonderful, but it charges a high price, the bastard. So here we work with the usual rolling technique. And remember, our lymph nodes aren't just here. The lymph nodes go all the way to the perineal area. And so if in classical massage we don't go into this area at all, starting from here all the way down, then here we do go in there. But carefully, of course, within the bounds of propriety. There. Well, let's start with something simple. We start just like this, the usual rolling technique. You see, it's a dry technique. The leg dangles back and forth. Here it compresses and decompresses. Then my hand, you see, it's like it's taking off over the bone and then landing. It lands like this and takes off like that. You can do it with your forearms if you like. And accordingly here you see I can add my second hand. Can you see? I can do it this way. Understood? Do you understand what I mean? There, and so on. I can definitely do it just like this, you know, if I really truly feel like it, honestly. It's still rolling, and like this. See, I'm rolling it from hand to hand. Next, I place... Just don't shake it too much to protect the knee joint. Placing it here. I kind of, I hold my hand like this and sort of roll onto it. And by doing so, the popliteal fossa is gradually drained. You can't press hard. The tissue there is loose. It's very, the structures are very soft and delicate. Understood? There. Other variations we can use here are here. Gravity also helps us. See? And finally, the last variation, we can do it this way. 1. If you want, over here. And you see, each time, this is what I do. Is this also for the popliteal fossa done at the same time? Yes, that's all there is to it. There. There. This is the simplest way to drain the main channel. I focus on where our, and each time, there. Each time. There. Why do I start from here? Because if this area is filled with lymph, I first have to empty it. I move to the next section, then the next, then the next, and then I go back. I can go backwards. So the movement is both from proximal to distal and from distal, yes, in both directions. You can do it this way. There are many variations. The knee is cracking. Interesting, is that a male or female crack? Male, she's still young, of course. Fresh and young. Ah, that's from an injury I had. They wanted to remove my meniscus. Oof, that's awful. But it was restored. There, and now look. It's the same thing here. We lift it up like this and there and there, and there and there, and there and there, and there and there, and there and there. Got it? Do you understand? So we're rolling it over the arm. This is what the rolling technique looks like from the front side. So once again, I want to draw your attention to the collectors. So here, and here. We also have a collector here, but we'll work more with this collector from the back. I'll show you how. You can do it from the front too, of course. There. You gather it, you see it's this kind of motion. And here we're not just, here we're going in a circle, see? There. And the pes anserinus in this region. The pes anserinus region is also a collector, and so when we work, we both gently rub here to increase the mobility of the pes anserinus, and we also work on the area of the popliteus muscle, which is a collector for the popliteal fossa. Right now I've barely worked with the popliteal fossa, but it has become much softer. Purely from this general flushing action.